Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being on the call with us this morning. And we're really excited that you decided to spend some time with us. And as we discuss marketing and how to get that wonderful product or service that you're developing into the hands of your customers. So we'll start out with a brief explanation of who we are and briefly review our purpose and agenda for today. And then we're going to introduce our guests from Devaney Associates. I will ask everyone as you join until you are going to speak, if you have questions, to keep your mic muted so we don't get that background noise that we all have, the dogs and the children and all the other things going on, the notifications. So first, my name is Kim Mozingo, and I am a program manager with the Maryland Defense Technology Commercialization Center. Also on the call today are Griffin St. Louis, who is a program manager as well, and Gary Evans, who is the director of the program. The DefTech is, I'm sorry, someone is presenting. DefTech is funded by the Federal Economic Development Administration through the Maryland Department of Commerce. And our role is to connect businesses with the DoD labs in the state of Maryland. So that's in a nutshell what we do, and we're happy to talk more about that, but that's not going to be our focus today. Today, we're going to talk about marketing. We've had a couple of these webinars, and we've had a few questions about marketing. We had several questions earlier in the chat. I had asked people, what do you want to see? What do you want to talk about? And we got some good questions. So we've already discussed, I'm sorry, I'm just going to pause for a minute. So back to it. So we've had a series of meetups where we discuss the challenges of developing products with Harvard Designs Manufacturing. We had a discussion with two of our clients, Molecular Tools and Hawkeye MedTech, about getting into the medical supply chain. And in those discussions, of course, marketing is always part of the conversation. So we did bring up the idea of packaging your product at the end of our product development conversation. And that leads us into this discussion of marketing. It's a good segue to talk about this topic, and which is very broad. So when we did set up this meetup, I asked participants what their biggest pain point is right now with regards to marketing, and also their biggest customer pain points. And that wasn't necessarily just about marketing, but just in general, to get everyone thinking about a focus on your customer as you think about marketing your products and services. So we are going to go through a couple of topics. We're going to talk about what marketing is and isn't. We're going to touch on sales. We'll talk about branding, and we're going to spend some time on public relations. We do have tried to work in your questions into our discussion this morning, but if we don't get to those and you have a question, feel free to use the chat window to let us know that you have a question, and then you can unmute your mic and ask. Let me start out with introducing our guests this morning. So I'm really excited because we have Devaney Associates with us this morning. Diane Devaney is the founder of that company, and she's going to tell us about that. And she brought along her PR expert, Lindsay Herbert. So we're going to hear from both of those. Good morning, Diane.
Good morning.
Good morning, Lindsay.
Good morning.
So Lindsay has dogs, which is very human. That's fine. So we're going to talk too about, the particular challenges that we have today. Many of the concerns people have to do with, how do you keep in touch with your clients? How do you maintain that relationship at a distance, which can be challenging. Obviously, this isn't the best. It would be wonderful if we were all in a room together and talking. So before we get started, I want Diane to give us some background on Devaney Associates. She's done some interesting work, and she's been around for a long time. They are absolutely experts in this area. So Diane, can you tell us about Devaney Associates?
Hi, everybody. We really appreciate the opportunity to share our company and some of our expertise. So Devaney Associates is going to be 29 years old this year. Just to give you a sense of size, we're 10 people full-time. We bill close to $4 million a year. And we're considered a full service advertising, marketing, and PR firm, which means we handle everything in-house. We have designers that create websites. We do writing. We do branding, positioning. We name products. We write complete marketing plans. We have an in-house media director who buys, digital, television, radio advertising. Lindsay is our PR director, and we handle media relations for many clients. And when we talk about our clients, we do have a good segment in technology, but I believe that I never wanted to put all my eggs in one basket when it came to clients. So we have a very broad client base. And we're going to share some different stories and some different solutions throughout this. So Kim, can I just move forward with kind of some definitions that we wanted to clarify?
Yes, please talk about what marketing is and what it is not.
Mm-hmm. We thought right off the bat we would sort of just define a couple things that we're going to refer to. And then we are definitely going to address communicating right now. Everything for everyone has changed with COVID-19. And we want to give you some tips on whether you should be out there, if you should be out there, what you should be saying, and some different tools that will help you hopefully move forward after today. So when we talk about marketing, marketing is literally everything that you do to sell your product. It's beyond the design of your product and service and the packaging. It's the shirts that your sales team wears. It's the trucks that deliver your product. It's your on-hold message at your corporate office. It's interviews that maybe your developer does. It's all of your social media. It's every single piece that goes into your product or your service. Now, branding is another term that gets thrown around a lot. And a brand really is the process of giving meaning and feeling to a product or service. And one thing that branding does is it combines your practical elements of your product and service and your emotional elements. And this is true. It's not just true for B2C, business to consumer. It's also very true for any B2B product. So take an example. Let's say a technology firm has deep experience in government contracting. Okay. So they have that GovCon experience. Okay. And we can position them that way as one of the most experienced candidates out there. But the one thing we want to keep in mind is when you're selling that product, that you want to make the person purchasing it feel confident. You want them to feel like they made a good decision picking your company. So a brand is that combination of the practical pieces of the product or service and that emotional part, the way you want your purchaser to feel. So, any product can be copied or service can be copied, but a brand cannot be copied. When you have something like Coke and Pepsi, they're very similar, but you're either a Coke person or you're a Pepsi person. Not very many people go back and forth. So a brand is really, really important. Now, one of the first steps once you have your brand sort of developed is creating a positioning statement. And we have a graphic that sort of illustrates the positioning statement. I don't know if Kim can put it up for me or not. If not, we can share it afterwards. So any good salesperson has an elevator speech that's usually about 2 minutes long. A positioning statement is shorter than that. It is only one statement. And it's one of the very first things you do when developing your marketing. And it's a process, but in essence, this sort of boils it down. What business are you in? Now, sometimes it's really simple. You can be in IT services or, but we had a client once that they did commercial cleaning for resort properties. There wasn't exactly even a segment for this, and we had to really define what business they were in. Then who is your audience? Many products have lots and lots of different audiences, and you have to really look at the different ones. But this is where you also really look at their emotional sort of, how do they feel now? A client we had, Port Discovery Children's Museum, our target is new moms of young children. They're always stressed. They never feel like they're doing as much as they should be doing. And so really looking at how they feel now, but if they come and bring their child to Port Discovery Children's Museum, to play and learn. We want them to feel like they made a good decision. We want them to feel like a good mother. So really looking at that audience and all the different target markets within it. Then you have to look at your competition. You may have, let's say, you may hold the most patents of anybody in your industry. But if somebody else, one of your competitors is already saying that, they kind of own that. So you really have to look at your competition and really analyze how they're positioning themselves. So then you move on to what differentiates yourself. Everybody's done SWOT analysis and things like that. But it's key to find out things that differentiate you that your competition isn't already saying, that they don't already own. And then when we talk about brands, every brand needs to have a personality. If you're selling to the government, maybe you need a really professional, buttoned-up personality. If you're promoting a restaurant, maybe you can have something that's more laid back. It completely depends on who you're selling to and what your product is. All of this sort of boils down, and you create a positioning statement, which really is for your customer who has the following problem. Our product or service provides a unique solution, and that is because. So this sort of just boils down what you should be thinking of when you go to position your product. And then I think the last thing that I'm going to talk about as far as definitions before I turn it over to public relations is market research. Market research can be as large or small, but it's really that function of getting information that backs up and supports a lot of all of your marketing strategies. It can be research into opportunities or problems. Like right now with the coronavirus coming in the fall, there's going to be a lot of problems. I mean, depending on what you're selling, it could be supply chain. It could, I mean, there's a myriad of problems that have just entered into everybody's sort of marketing strategy. It can be market research on your target markets, a deep dive. You may sell a product that goes through a distributor, so you don't have access to the very end purchaser. So you really have to analyze the end user, but you have to analyze your distribution team that's selling that. A lot of times we'll do market research on existing brand awareness. Do people know your product? What do they think about it? So market research is a really key factor in understanding your customer and setting a future marketing strategy. So Lindsay is now going to address some public relations.
Actually, Diane, before we move on, a lot of our attendees this morning are aware of the term customer discovery, which is something that I-Corps uses. It's a National Science Foundation program to help businesses that are just getting started before they've actually developed a product learn more about their customers. So I'm glad that you talked to us about market research, because I think that opportunity to get a deep understanding of your customer is critically important. So that is something that you help clients with, right? Do you take them through a process of kind of helping them discover their customer and understand who their customer is?
Definitely. It's very important to almost put yourself in your customer's shoes. I'll just give you one example. A commercial electric company, I met the owner and I told him what we did. And he's like, oh, I don't need any marketing or advertising or PR. And I said, well, what's your biggest business pain point? And he said, oh, recruiting. I'm like, you need us. So for entry level, like apprentices right out of high school, I said, how are you recruiting them? And he said, I'm just going to the counselors at the high school. And I said, well, that's not who you should be talking to. You need to speak, you have to put yourself in the place of a high school kid, and who they're most influenced by are their parents. So you need to be speaking to the parents and let them know if a child goes into their 18-year-old graduate from high school, goes into your apprentice program, they're going to graduate with an AA degree with zero debt. They have the option to leave after 6 months and not pay anything back. They're making 40 grand a year. And basically every CEO of an electric company once was an electrician. So once we told that story to the right group, the same thing in recruiting experienced electricians. He was advertising in Major League Baseball and at the Ravens. And I said, again, you're not talking to the experienced electricians. You're talking to their wives. You're talking to the people that are frustrated that they aren't getting paid enough, that they're working on the weekends, that they don't have good benefits. And once we started talking to the wives, all of their applications for experienced electricians increased. So really looking at your target market and thinking, besides that actual person we want to reach, who are their influencers is key.
And that's not something a lot of businesses think about. We don't stop to think about who it is we should be talking to. And I think that's why people can appreciate, working with professionals that help you think outside the box and think outside the normal way you think, move from your own mental model. So I appreciate the conversation about branding and how, you help businesses kind of find their unique voice so that they can speak to the right customers in a way that makes an emotional connection. So we learn how businesses communicate with their customers. We talked about that. And yes, PR is a different animal. And there's a lot of confusion about that. So I really appreciate Lindsay being on to be able to talk to us about this different type of person. I think this is one thing to keep in mind, is that when you are communicating at all, whether it's through marketing, your branding strategy, or through a public relations campaign, you need to think about, as Diane said, the person that you're actually communicating with, who needs to hear the message. And so there's a different way of thinking when we talk about PR. So can you talk about that, Lindsay, kind of the purpose and practice of PR, and share your thinking about how businesses can be thinking about this?
Sure. So, I mean, the generic definition of PR is really just managing communications between a company and any of its publics. So that could be anybody. That could be the press, that could be your customers, that could be your referral sources or your employees. In our agency world, what we really talk about as PR is media relations. So working primarily with the media. That means you're talking directly to the reporters and the editors who are going to be your spokespeople in this. They're going to be the between people, sharing the key messages about your company with their readers or viewers. Also falls under PR is social media, and this unique environment that we have now in the technology world that allows you to talk directly to your customers and to your audiences without having to use the media as the go-between. So really, it's really any editorial coverage that you are not directly purchasing and buying is really how we define PR under our agency. There's a few components that go into that. First is developing your news bureau, figuring out what news your company has to share and who you're sharing it with. Under that component, again, then you've got your channels that you're using. So you're taking that news to local media, you're taking that news to your trade and your industry, and you're taking that news to your directly to your customers through your social media channels or your blogs or your email blasts or your newsletters or whatever else, other tools that you use to talk to your audiences. Expert positioning falls into that. When we talk to experts, that is just making sure that your spokespeople, that your CEOs, that your innovators in your company are out there, that people know that you're an expert in your trade and what you do. And from that point, that really takes you beyond just sharing, how do I say this, directly. Instead of being directly promotional for your company, what is it that you have to contribute to the conversations in your industry? What are your points that you can really speak to? Because that is really what the media cares about. They don't necessarily want to write an article about how great your product is, but they want to know what the medical expert in your company has to say about this particular issue that's in the news. So that's really where we start. I can kind of lead into, as far as talking about news, what's newsworthy, what's not. I'm sorry, I'm crinkling a bag because my cat is being annoying. All right, sorry. So newsworthy is really just making a list about, actually, I should start here. I think when you start building your PR campaign, the most important thing you need to do first and foremost is figure out what your key messages are. Key messages are a little different than your brand. They go along with your brand, but they're not necessarily the key selling points that are going to directly sell your product, but they are, what are the things that we really want people to know about our company? What are the things that set us apart? What are the facts about our company that we want to make sure that people know? When I write key messages for a client, we usually keep them between 5 and 10, maybe. You don't want too many. But when you develop those key messages, that really drives every other message that you put out there. Whether you're talking on social, whether you're talking to the media, you want to make sure that every single thing you secure is supporting one of those key messages. And it really helps drive the purpose behind everything that you do. After that, then we talk about News Bureau. News Bureau are press releases. What news can we announce? Unfortunately, not everything is newsworthy. Sometimes things that are newsworthy to us in your building are not necessarily necessary to the outside world. I have to have a lot of conversations in the tech space about how your new logo or your new website is not necessarily anything the media is going to report on, even if it looks really nice and you're really proud of it. But news, I also say new is the key word there. So when you secure funding for your company, when you open, when you launch a new product or service, when you reach a key milestone, when you hire a key executive, C-level or higher, all of these things are news updates. Signing big contracts, signing big customers, securing new partnerships. These are things that you want to report on. The local media cares most about your business. So things that just have to do with the running of your business. And then the trades are really the place to look for whatever industry you are serving. So if you're in the healthcare space, find out what those publications are that cover that space and make sure that they get your news as well. The trades are usually the best inroads into getting kind of national coverage. They have a much wider audience outside of Baltimore. And yeah, I think, and I don't know, where would we like to go next?
Well, I think you brought up a really important point, and that is, this idea of what's newsworthy. So it sounds like what companies should be doing is really thinking through, these different publications and different opportunities to communicate. And likely the best way to do that is to actually go get a couple of their publications, read them, understand what their concerns are, because like you said, the fact that you have a new logo really isn't going to shake up the world. Nobody's going to care so much about that. You care about it, and that's great, but that's not something that's newsworthy. So
we always say that. They always tell us that you have to, we've got to read the outlets that we're pitching. So the first way to get news coverage is to be reading the news and to know what the conversations are and possibly know where you can fill in. I will say right now, everybody's world was turned upside down about a month ago by this coronavirus. So in the news world right now, especially on the local level, that is where the chat is. There's not a whole lot of other space right now in any of the local TV stations or outlets to talk about other topics. But that being said, if your company is doing anything of responding in any kind of way, the media, they want to know how you've been impacted by this situation. They want to know what you're doing to help. If you've got a product that is filling any kind of need at this point that's related to this virus, they are interested to hear it. If you are hiring, they are interested to hear it. If you've had to lay off, they are interested in hearing it. If you're having trouble getting support. So right now we've got all of our clients kind of looking at, and some have been kind of in the non-traditional way, but any clients who have been impacted by this in any matter or reaching out to help anyone, we just send that out. And you don't even have to know how to do a press release. It's not really about writing. It's just kind of knowing who the key contacts are at the local media and just sending them emails with the main ideas of what is going on at your company. And it doesn't take a professional necessarily to write that at this point. The way the news cycle is turning at this point, it's very fast. They just want to know who, what, when, where, and why, and how to get more information.
Thank you. Those are all really good things to think about when companies are thinking about how do you get coverage. So we did have a specific question about getting national coverage, and I think you answered it in working with the trade organizations. Do you have any other ideas or strategies? I'm sure it depends on the industry and what it is exactly that somebody's doing. Because as we talked about this yesterday, marketing isn't a one size fits all. There are these guidelines and ideas and ways to approach things, but what we say here for one company might not apply to another one. But in general, are there any tips or ideas that you have for someone that's looking for national coverage?
Well, essentially, I mean, we define national coverage a few different ways. And yes, I do think for most clients, especially in a B2B tech kind of space, the trade outlets that have national audiences are really the best bet to go there. You want to know who writes specifically about your industry. And when I say trades, that could be print magazines, that could be scientific journals, that could be websites and blogs of people who write in your space. The other thing I usually tout about national coverage is that your local press really are sometimes the entranceway into national press. WBAL is an NBC affiliate. If they get a compelling enough story, they are going to share it with their NBC folks. The Baltimore Sun is part of the Tribune family. If they get an interesting story that is relative in other markets, it can hit the wire and appear on, especially online, in other outlets. The BBJ, the Baltimore Business Journal, is tied into American Business Journals. You can be on the Dallas Business Journal and see an article that published in Baltimore. So we really do say that the get your local media outlets first. They really are your best advocate to helping you get into national. But that said, if you're reading the New York Times, we're also lucky to have the Washington Post close by. So they are kind of a national outlet that counts as a regional one too. So they're a great place to start. But if you want the New York Times, if you want the Wall Street Journal, I mean, just, again, read them, know who's writing about your space. Sometimes it takes the groundwork to figure out exactly who the contact is, but go ahead and, reach out and send them your information. Just know that you're obviously always going to be a smaller fish in a much bigger ocean when you start talking about national, and the competition is a lot bigger. And you also, to be in the national press, especially on those big national news outlets, you really have to make sure your story has a national appeal and reach. Who are the people who are being affected by your product and your story? And if it's not outside this small community here, then your community outlet is the best place to start. But really, that's master your locals, get in with them, make sure they know who you are, make sure they're telling your stories. Find the trades that are most relative to you and where you are. And then beyond that, figure out the outlets you really want to be in and just do the groundwork to find out who the best contacts are and what the best angle for them would be. That's kind of my recipe for trying to secure national press.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that. So I would have a question about how do you recommend a business approach a reporter in a specific domain? Like imagine we're talking about the Baltimore Business Journal or the Washington Post, and someone has been doing their homework on that and they know who they want to go. What's the best way to approach them? So they're busy people. They've got a lot of stuff going on, just like the rest of us.
Email is usually a hit. They email. And then my key is always be pleasantly persistent. Follow up now and then. If you've got, if it's a timely story, just try to stay on top. Don't worry about sending them multiple emails. Maybe once a week or so, unless it's super urgent. But yeah, most of them don't have a lot of time, especially right now. They don't have a lot of time to just pick up the phone and chat. So that is probably not the best way to go about it. But I will say something that we find maybe when the news cycle has come down just a bit and people aren't quite as overwhelmed. But if we don't have hard news to start off with a company, we start with a process called source filing. And what that is just reaching out to the press and saying, hey, I'm working with this new client. Here's my new client. He's a financial planner. Here's what he does. He's an expert in these 5 topics. If you happen to be writing about anything that's relevant to any of this, please just keep him in your records and feel free to give us a call if he can contribute a quote to you. And that just gives me a way to introduce myself and my client to the media. It helps give them a useful tool to keep in their files. And it gives them a reason to reach out to me when they have a specific need. So that really is a useful way. If you are kind of just new to this and you're just trying to introduce your company and figure out who writes what and how you can possibly help out different editors and what they're doing, that's just a good way to be that good first step to take. So I would think about those first conversations with the media. They want to know who you are, what do you do? What's the story with your company? Are you just starting up? What are your goals here? Or do you have a great new product that is serving an imperative need in a specific space? And then really, how can you be helpful to them? So the best thing is, what do you need? How can I help you? With editors, I talk a lot about, do you take contributed content? I write about this topic and this topic a lot. Would you be interested in seeing anything that I've written? Do you have a need? Just trying to figure out how you can be most helpful for them.
That is fantastic. Thank you. I think the idea of offering up expertise just for the future, just in case, is brilliant, as is writing articles for them. A lot of times, like you said, in this news cycle, there's never a lack of things to write about. But the idea of being able to contribute content when maybe things are slower or when they need a different piece is a wonderful idea. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
We did have a question. I think this, Diane, will be more for you. And that is, when companies are thinking about marketing and they're trying to establish a marketing budget, they should, of course, they're a business and they should be thinking about their return on investment. Can you address that for companies and help them figure out how might they establish a budget?
There's different ways to establish a budget. A lot of times it's percentage of sales. There's all different formulas depending on the industry, but a lot of it goes to sales goals. What are you trying to achieve? I will say more and more as advertising goes to digital, it is there. You can provide so much more ROI. I mean, I can tell you exactly how many people clicked on an ad. We can create custom landing pages where they go to. I know how many people open an email. With automated marketing, it has just made ROI so much easier. And the goal of any advertising program is to create a plan that has the least amount of waste. We do not want to advertise to people that are not one of our target markets, either geographically or demographically. So you want to come up with vehicles that reach your target market, and you want to get in front of them as they go about their life and their day, whether they go from car to office to home. Are they a busy mom out and about? Are they, somebody who works for the government and is going into DC every day? You just really, as I have said before, want to put yourself in the shoes of who you're trying to reach and figure out the ways that you can sort of be part of their day and part of their life.
So that goes back to doing your homework, really doing the market research, going through a customer discovery process and understanding who it is that you're trying to build a solution for. And I appreciate that thinking of always having the customer in front of your mind, remembering who it is that you're trying to talk to. Believe it or not, it sounds like common sense and easy to do, but it's easy to lose your way and think about this tangent or that tangent, or even go with your own mental model of what problem you think you're solving. So I think we can move on to, if anybody has questions, you can use the chat to let us know. But we did have an awful lot of concern, of course, with the current pandemic and the crisis that we're in. People want to know about, should they be marketing right now? Should they be out there? What should they be talking about? The challenges of staying connected with their clients, especially for people who maybe aren't comfortable using tools like Google Hangouts or Zoom or other ways to communicate. Can you share some of your expertise in this time that we're in right now?
Sure. Should you be marketing and should you be out there? Absolutely. You should first be using all of your existing tools, your websites, your social media, your email signatures, and you can't just, this is, in my lifetime, this is the first time that something's happened that's literally affected every single person. There's nobody that doesn't, nobody who isn't concerned for their family, for their coworkers. I mean, this has affected everybody. So you can't ignore the elephant in the room. You need to, you can't just go back and mark it as normal. You need to, explain, what your company's doing about it. If protocols have changed, if hours have changed, if working styles have changed. You need to build community support. You need to let people know we're supporting our employees in this way. We're supporting our clients. We're supporting the neighborhood where our office is in or whatever. And you need to be part of sort of the solution. And right now, the solution is trying to figure out how to keep business moving. I know everybody got caught up at the very beginning in essential and non-essential businesses. But even if you're not an essential business, providing IT support maybe to keep people working at home, you still have clients that maybe are essential, or they're not saying shut down a lot of the businesses that are going on. Even, I mean, restaurants are finding a way to work. Savile Food Service, our client who literally lost, all they do is service restaurants. They're out there giving away food to the employees that got laid off at restaurants. You have to figure out a way to do the new normal. It's shifted more from sort of short-term business results to long-term. This is an investment in your company and your brand. So you need to show people that you care and that you are aware and that you're doing everything. And staying connected to your clients. I mean, my company, I do this every week. We look at it. And when I really looked at our clients, I almost broke them down into people that are dramatically affected by COVID-19. We have an events company. We handle the Ingenuity Project. It's a public-private partnership in the Baltimore City schools. I mean, we don't have any more kids coming to Baltimore to Poly that we can work with. Star Academy, they teach, they teach you drone flying. They teach you 3D printing. They run robotics competitions. They've completely had to shut down. So we have had to look at every single client and say, okay, in this situation, this is what we can help you communicate. We do a lot of healthcare. And while they're super busy right now, they don't want anybody to come to the hospital. And we're trying to help them communicate that message. Lindsay handles PR for HFAM, which is the Healthcare Facilities Management Association of Maryland, which handles all of the nonprofit nursing homes in the state of Maryland. I mean, they're a client where we're doing twice as much work because they're so overwhelmed, but they're also a client that had a huge event that we canceled. I mean, when it comes to events, we had clients that the first sort of wave was just canceling, thinking we're going to just reschedule. Now we have clients that are like, well, how can we reimagine this event? Could it be a virtual event? What do we need to do to change the event? I think you have to look at all your clients and on an individual basis and say, okay, what can I do to help them? We have a client that's a corporate housing client that has been devastated. And maybe for them, it's just, let's just brainstorm with you. Let's just know that we're still part of your team. We have had clients cancel contracts. And in that instance, we said, you know what, we understand that you're worried and you can't pay now, but we have the bandwidth and we're going to keep working for you. And in the end, we're just going to help you get through this, So people want to hear from you. I've yet to have anybody, client, prospect, anything that I've reached out to who said, leave me alone. Everybody wants, they appreciate you checking in. They appreciate you offering to make a connection or to do brainstorming or anything.
So you are actually living out the advice that you just gave everyone, and that is to, how to stay connected to your clients. And one way to do that is to think through, put yourself in their shoes and think through what they're going through and how you can help them. That is perfect. So I'm just looking through some of the other questions that we had. Excuse me. We did have a question about, how do you, with some businesses, there's a lot of personal connection that is required. There's one-on-one, face-to-face connection. And that is just a way that people are comfortable working. When you can't have that personal contact, do you have any ideas for how to keep people moving through a funnel, a process, how to get your clients to stay connected and still move along, which can be challenging based on everything we just talked about?
I mean, again, I'm doing this. I do all the sales for my company. So, I mean, I have reached out to my entire pipeline to offer support. One thing I offer a lot of people is connections. Like, who do you need? Who can I help you connect with? That's going to help you move forward with your business. Understanding you may not be able to do business with us right now, but how can I help connect? I mean, we have actually gotten new business in the last 5 weeks. We've lost business. We've got new business. A lot of people that I've talked to, this has been working really well, is connect with your networks. If you're in a networking group, if you're in a referral group, if you're in just a women in business group, reach out to them and just offer support to your connections. What can I do to help you? Sales wise still a really good time to build a prospect list. All the things that you want to do. I actually have a folder of really bad email blasts I've gotten from essential businesses that I know need my help, but don't have time to talk to me right now. Further down the road, we're sending out a very small email next week to lapsed clients and to prospects that is offering an hour of brainstorming with some of our strategy team, just to say, hey, are you just stuck on how to communicate this? One thing I would also urge everybody to do is make sure all of your employees are engaged. Right now, it's hard to go. Our company was not remote at all. I had one person worked 2 days a week, my media director, at home. So making sure that we're all connected. I've sent things to my team. I know people who, from their company, everybody got like custom, face masks that reflected their personality. And I've also written a lot of notes and letters to my team, to my prospects, to my clients. Our HFAM client has been doing television interviews in an Orioles vest, and it's driving me insane. So I just ordered him a vest from Land's End with his logo embroidered that he's going to get today. Just people want to hear from you. They want to connect.
That is an excellent point, I think, about people wanting to connect and maybe not knowing how to go about that or get that conversation started. I think we have a question.
Oh, yeah, actually, I have a question. Is my mic too loud?
A little, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay, great. So yeah, just about kind of drawing on the idea of people wanting to connect. I have a question about branding. A lot of the companies we work with are very technically focused and product development oriented. So it may be that branding is something that slips by the wayside that maybe some companies aren't focused on. So with keeping that in mind, technology and a product development focused company, what would you say are elements that contribute to a strong brand with a company like that? And how would you go about developing that brand?
I mean, we would follow our little chart that we showed, and we can send that out after this. But every product is providing a solution to a customer, and you've got to make sure you get that message out there. There may not be a product that does exactly that, but it's still benefit solution. And how is it going to make their business life better, or whatever. You have to remember, it's the practical and the emotional connection that makes somebody want to buy it.
Okay. Thank you. I think that likely appealed to a lot of people. Does anybody else have a question for us? What person had asked about distribution channels and getting into different distribution channels? I'm not sure if that is distribution of your marketing message or distribution of your product. So if we want to talk about that, if that person is on, let's see. I don't know that she is. Okay, but I think we don't have any questions. Are there any other points that you want to share with people, Diane or Lindsay, if you want to jump back in on anything? Okay. Well,
I mean, I guess the only thing I would add that I didn't say before is that, especially when you're tech providers, case studies and people who have used your product and people who have benefited from it are really crucial to your PR campaign, especially for those trade publications I was talking about. A lot of times, especially if you are the service provider, solution provider, a lot of your success stories, you may not be the star of the show. The case study is, here is a company who had this need, and here is how they made their purchasing choice, and here's what they implemented, and here are the measurable results that they've seen since implementing it. And a lot of times that's your best way to getting your stories told, is through your customers. So just especially early on, just make sure that you're having those conversations. You're always keeping marketing in the back of your mind as you see people implement your solution, as you see people start to measure results. Just always be thinking about asking that question, would you be willing to share your story? Can we get a testimonial from you? Would you be willing to speak with a reporter about, in this trade, about how your experience with our product? So just always keep that in the back of your mind, because they really are the people who have benefited from your solutions, are really the ones who are going to help sell your stuff the most.
I love the idea of putting case studies together, especially if the business is complicated in some way. It helps other people that might be interested in your solution, whether it's a product or a service, understand how other customers have used you, and gives you a better picture of exactly, or can give people a better picture of exactly what it is you do. I know we, as Def Tech, we struggle with that a little bit, getting the message across about exactly what we do, because it is a complex process. And that's probably something at some point we should have some case studies up to help people. So that was a great point. Thank you for that.
Yeah, the testimonial point, that I hadn't thought about that. I guess kind of along the same lines, if you're generating lots of testimonials, you have lots of use cases. How do you select what testimonials to make public? Like, what makes a strong testimonial from someone?
Well, it just depends on what you're trying to speak to in that particular channel. So I think you want to, again, going back to those emotional drivers as well as the practical needs for your product, I think you want testimonials and case studies that speak to each of them. And we will make a list. We will make a list of every feature of a product, every benefit of a product, every industry that we serve. And you really want one that speaks to each of those, so that when the time is right and you need one that speaks exactly to that, those characteristics, that you've got that on file. So sometimes just making a checklist of the testimonials and the industries that you need to represent and the benefits that you need to show. I think a good testimonial when you see one. When you get a really good one, you're like, oh, this is what we've been waiting for. This person loves this. This is the one we want other people to share. But yeah, you want people, again, it's the practical use, but it's those emotional drivers. How do your customers feel when your solution or product has done exactly what it was supposed to do for them? How do they feel? How does it make them feel? And you want testimonials that really speak to that.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Very good. One of the things that we do in order to get those testimonials, rather than just going to somebody and saying, can you, give us a testimonial, which can be awkward, is to put it into a conversation. And the conversation that we have with our clients on, we would hope a twice a year basis, but it doesn't happen that much, is we just do a very quick 4-question client satisfaction survey. And we try to do this over the phone, so it is a conversation. If sometimes that doesn't work, so we will use things like different tools to do an online survey. But the idea of having that conversation, giving yourself the opportunity to have that conversation through a customer satisfaction survey, and then pulling from that testimonials that you can use on your website, is something that we've done and are constantly trying to do. When we have in-person events anyways, we had sought feedback on those from people. And that's an opportunity to gain testimonials. I assume, depending on your business, when you deliver a product or service, you could always go back to them. In fact, you probably should be going back to your customers and saying, how's that working for you? Did it solve the problem you needed it to solve? And out of that, you could gather testimonials as well. So I don't see that we have any other specific questions. I do want to thank you, Diane and Lindsay, so much for coming on this morning and participating with us and being here to offer your advice and your expertise, especially in this particular climate where everyone is still trying to figure out what this new normal is and what it might look like in the future. We appreciate your time. We appreciate everyone's time this morning for just for being here and showing up. And we look forward to seeing you. I will put in a plug. Next week is Sunday, actually, is called World Intellectual Property Day. And since that is our area of expertise, helping people connect with the intellectual property and facilities and equipment at the DoD labs in Maryland, we're going to be celebrating that day in a meetup called World IP Day Celebration. We're going to have a couple of people from our DoD labs, the Medical Research and Development Center, which is in Frederick County, and the Chemical Biological Center, which is at Aberdeen Proving Ground. We'll be on to talk about some of the cutting edge technology that's available for license. We are also going to be joined by a researcher named Somnath Sengupta, who worked for ARL, and he is going to tell you his entrepreneurial journey story. We're also going to talk to another inventor. His name is Mike Steele. He is an engineer for the Navy, but also an inventor on the side, and has developed several products. So we're just going to have a good conversation. We're going to talk a little bit more in detail about maybe a case study kind of scenario about what DefTech does and how we've worked with at least one client to give people a feel for that. So that will be next Tuesday morning on, it will be here. It's on our meetup. So visit Taking Technologies to Market meetup to sign up for that. So thank you, everyone. I hope you have a good day. Stay safe from the storms that are supposed to be coming this afternoon, and stay inside, wash your hands, be safe. Thank you.